And sharing your time and most importantly, your attention. So we are really happy to host you for this, what we call as the crown jewel of Frost and Sullivan and an annual exercise that we do. So I am very pleased to be joined today by my esteemed colleagues, Vandana and Vivek. So as I always say, ladies first. So Vandana, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Ankit. Hi, everyone. We're really excited to present you the top 50 technologies today. I'm Vandana, part of the Tech Vision team, along with Vivek and Ankit today. Really looking forward to our interactive and interesting session.
Excellent. Thanks, Vandana. Vivek.
Thanks, Sanket. So, hi, I'm Vivek. I'm leading Tech Vision practice. This is one of the most exciting webinars that we do in a year because we take a sneak peek at what are the technologies that are coming our way. And as we have rightly mentioned, it is going to drive multi-billion dollar decisions, whether you want to buy or build or borrow or partner with the technologies. I think that is what we are looking forward to. We are going to give you a sneak peek of what we have done in the 50 technologies and look forward to have a very interactive session.
Excellent. Thank you, Vivek. Yeah. So as for myself, I am Ankit Shukla, based out of London. I've been with Frost and Sullivan for more than 20 years. An engineer by background, so I love technology and innovation, and that's where I think we pour our heart and soul into on an ongoing basis. So, as mentioned, the top 50 technologies is essentially designed to drive your decision making. And those decisions over the years, as we have realized, are either you build the technology yourself. If you can't build, then you buy. If you can't buy, then you either borrow or partner. So, what we would request all of you to envision the top 50 technologies as is your partner to make those decisions. And that's what we'll explore over the next 24 minutes or so, because we promise that we will make it powerful and impactful in this very quick session. So through this journey that we're going to take you through, we will focus and put spotlight on some of the key technologies out of the 50, because even if we take a day on each of these 50 technologies, we can talk for 50 days, but we rather save that for another day for you in person. But when you think of Frost and Sullivan is clearly focused on identifying what we call as the strategic imperative eight. And as an organization, we look at each of these eight factors that you see over here, which are clearly the underlying elements for growth in itself. And right now could be no less important to put focus on these, because as we realize, right from value chain through to the transformative megatrends to challenges, the competition, I don't even need to highlight this of but most importantly, what disruptive technologies and convergence and business models are bringing together is critical for you to make your choices as we go further in time. And that's why, as we say, over the next 23 minutes or so, we want to showcase to you what we call as growth opportunities that you can put more attention and time towards. So, how do we do it? So, as a division, we have been doing it for 25 years. And I couldn't insist it enough, because in the era of LLM and machine learning and everyone getting excited by what AI can do, especially in our industry, and how we all as Homo sapiens link with information and intelligence, at its very basic element, AI or machine learning is at best just a statistical averaging of the past. It cannot predict the future. And that's where our focus for the last 25 years, looking at the megatrends through the BEATS model, which is business model, economic, environmental, tech, and social, gives us that ability to look far out and focus on weak signals that will become major trends tomorrow. And we bring that together in our focus across these 9 technology clusters. For the sake of your simplicity to remember, is if Tech Vision, the division that we all belong to, was a solar system, these are the 9 planets that we have. And each of these planets, which are research groups, evolve in their own way. And as you would realize that, which is the way in which the science and technology changes in the materials world, is very different from how it will be in computing or microelectronics. So we try and assess this in real time as to how these 9 clusters are evolving, along with the trends to eventually understand what is the impact across the industries. So hence, that's that three-dimensional view of trends, tech, and industry is what essentially we guide all our organizations to. And in the past 16 years of what we have been doing on the top 50 technology side, we have had some good predictions that we have been able to make. So some of the names over here of technologies that as you scan your eye across will give you that confidence in how the methodology that we have and the foresighting ability we have is able to narrow down on technology candidates that eventually have gone on to become billion-dollar blockbuster commercial opportunities. Now, if you think of it, AI or machine learning, we were looking at it 10 years ago. So every time I hear the word AI, you can imagine the reaction I have. Same is the case with on the hardware side, AI chips. We were looking at it in 2018 because our methodology was telling us in terms of the 8 factors that we use, which you will be shown in a little while, how those 8 factors were signaling us towards the impending growth that will bring. And you see some of the others, right? From mRNA drugs that we were injected in 2021, we were able to pick that 2 years prior to it, sort of, of course, becoming a case. Now, the principal reason for doing the top 50 technology exercise is also because since we have a very large volume of homegrown intelligence that we generate, we wanted to put a framework in front of it so that we could translate it for organizations to see what can happen in the near term and the long term itself. So every year in the first half of January, we go through a long list of technologies that we stress test across parameters to eventually arrive at this. So these are the top 50 technologies for 2026. As you can see, the 9 planets or the 9 technology clusters are up here, from ICT at 12 o'clock through to environment, health and wellness, med device, and then in clockwise direction to chemicals and advanced materials. And then coming out of each of these clusters are technologies that we believe will have near-term commercial potential. So let me qualify the statement near term. Near term being technologies that we anticipate will grow in the next 2 to 3 years. So as you scan your eye across this image, you will see some names which are familiar, some which will be new. And what we are going to do for you is the ones that are highlighted in orange, we're going to throw a little bit more spotlight so that you walk away a little bit more wiser. And of course, seeing those as opportunities that you can go into. And of course, later on, we would be keen to connect with you on the others that have been unhighlighted as well. So with that in mind, let me invite Vandana to take us through one of her favorite that she talks about quite a bit. So Vandana, over to you.
Thanks, Ankit. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm sure all of you have heard of GLP-1 receptor agonists by now. They were drugs that were originally developed for management of type 2 diabetes, but now are reshaping the global healthcare landscape by enabling up to 20% weight loss. And like Ankit mentioned before, some of the key factors that make technology appear within the top 50 list is its activity around the funding, the IP landscape and the market potential. Now, GLPs are definitely not brand new drugs, so the IP activity is moderate. However, the funding and market potential have increased drastically and is likely to continue to increase in the next few years. Now, if we can go to the next slide, Ankit. In terms of the innovation trends that are happening in GLPs, I can probably summarize it in 3 to 4 points overall. The first being, you're not just looking at monoagonist therapy. So you're not just looking at semaglutides, you're looking at dual receptor agonists such as tirzepatide and triple agonist, which is retatrutide, which can achieve up to 20 to 25% weight loss and will be truly game changers, not just because they're more effective in weight loss, but they are also able to go beyond diabetes and obesity into areas such as renal, improved renal health, decreased risk of cardiovascular outcomes, and decreased risk of heart failure. So you're expanding your indication universe across multiple indications that looks at the entire cardiometabolic, renal, and overall metabolic health landscape. You're also looking at sleep apnea as a potential indication that can be applied to GLP-1 drugs. Then you're not just looking at injectables, you're looking at oral formulations of these drugs. Now, oral Wegovy has been approved and is available already, but a very important contender in this page is Structure Therapeutics that's coming with an oral small molecule formulation of GLP that can achieve up to 15% weight loss and is comparable to the injectables that are available right now and has a lower discontinuation rate in phase 2-3 clinical trials. So that is going to be a key disruptor to the existing candidates that are already available. And the next most important point is the fact that semaglutide is going to come off patent in India this year and possibly China too. So that means there will be a flood of generics that will be available at a huge competitive price point. There are Indian drugs that are likely to be priced at 80% lower than the existing drugs. However, they are not likely to match the scale of manufacturing from the likes of Novo and Lilly. And both Novo and Eli Lilly are partnering with Indian pharma companies also to create the more localized and slightly more accessible and affordable versions of the drug available to the Indian population and Chinese populations. However, they will continue to be the leaders, but then they'll have a huge market competition that's going to be available in a very short time from now. So market access is going to change completely for GLPs going forward. And in the next 3 to 4 years, there will be a democratization of access to GLP, which has been one of the key sort of challenge points in terms of access, even though the rise of chronic conditions such as diabetes and obesity is going to grow and drive the demand for these new drugs. So these are some of the key and most important changes that you're likely to witness for GLP-1s, and they will continue to remain in the spotlight for the next few years as well. So that's about GLP. If we
Excellent.
can,
Thanks, Vandana. Yeah, moving on to the next one.
Yeah, the next one, I think we move very nicely into intelligent drug discovery platforms. Ankit was just talking about how AI is transforming everything. So it is, of course, transforming the pharma landscape in an unprecedented manner in terms of funding, market potential, and the volume of data that is generated. So you see a very high IP activity in this area because you're looking at patents that are developing very robust algorithms that combine omics data, imaging data, as well as real-world clinical data to derive actionable insights for end-to-end drug development. So if you can move on to the next slide, companies are not just looking at ad hoc use of AI for targeted discovery, and then maybe for better formulations that have better admit profiles and so on and so forth. But they're looking at full stack tech bio solutions that go from right from discovery to clinical development to biomanufacturing units, and that's going to be a game changer. So there are of course important players such as in silico and recursion which are already offering such end-to-end platform that integrate AI with holistic proprietary data set analysis that combine a whole sort of repository of omics data, human clinical data, as well as imaging and diagnostic data that's available today to not just find new undruggable targets, but then they're also using it to decrease the timelines across clinical development. And they will also be very important for improving production scale and volume without creating new production lines, and that's going to be a game changer. Case in point here being Eli Lilly, they are already using end-to-end robotic automation and predictive analytics to improve GLP production in their production unit at Relay. And I'm sure a lot of you would have seen Tom Cruise in Minority Report being able to predict a crime before it actually happens. But what Eli Lilly is already doing now is they are able to predict production line errors before they actually happen and are able to fix it in advance. So that way you're
Right.
minimizing errors, you're minimizing human intervention. Of course, there is real-time QC and monitoring that is also happening simultaneously to ensure that your production outputs are optimal and not just fully automated. So there is a hybrid mode that's happening there. But there is increasing collaboration with of large pharma with companies, tech bio companies such as Nvidia, InSilico, and several others. And AI for drug discovery is again not just restricted to small molecules. It's also going to expand into biologics, such as your monoclonal antibodies, RNA therapies, and several others. And and any large pharma company that does not adopt an AI first strategy for end-to-end drug development and discovery, they're likely to be very they're likely to be very disrupted structurally by the larger tech bio firms in the next few years. So that's something that's going to be tracked very closely in the next few years, and it's going to be very important and integral to integrate AI in the entire value chain.
Mm-hmm. All right. Excellent. Well, thanks for that, Vandana. I think we all got a very good download of how, of course, across intelligent drug discovery and GLP-1, the way things are moving. I think what's worthy of mentioning right now to everyone tuned into this is the fact that the signals that you see we are picking up, which is from patent activity to funding to market potential to how many sectors, how many industries, who are the key players, this has stayed as a methodology static within our process for the last 16 years. So we now have enough predictability that we have ourselves built into the overall process, which allows us to see where the signals are changing, why those signals are changing, and what is the impact of those signal change going to be like. And zooming into one of the other technologies of interest, Vivek, do you want to take it over for
Yeah,
AGI?
thank you so much, Ankit. I think Edge AI accelerators and staying in the same theme that Vandana outlined AI. So I'm going to come up with a completely different application of this AI. And the news is AI is moving from cloud to the edge. So naturally, when we talk about AI right now, we are thinking about huge data centers and the power that goes along with it, and all the enormous resources that it is sucking up. But what is being missed in that AI in cloud is number one, latency. The latency is not very high. Number two, the cost is extremely high, and third and most important, the GDPR laws or privacy is completely at the disposal of larger players. So what's the solution? The solution is some critical applications which require on-the-spot decision making are going to employ this edge AI accelerators going forward, which means that the decisions would be made at the edge rather than a large pattern recognition that happens at the back end with the cloud with the huge amount of data. But instead of that, you're going to see some of the decisions being made right at the AI at the edge by using AI. We are seeing huge amount of patent activity here, 21,000, more than 21,000 patents in last 2 years. I think that's mind-boggling number. Then the funding is about $18 billion. And as you can see, you're going to see the funding in NPUs or ultra low power architecture. So one of the advantages of edge accelerators is also low power consumption. So all of this is going to impact or going to see a lot of funding. The mega trends that we track, and this is another indicator which Ankit has been highlighting, that we look at how these technologies being shaped by mega trends, or how many mega trends are really supporting this particular technological advantage. And number 6 is extremely high, and we expect that the market potential in next about 4 years is about 75 billion. Now let's look at the use case. And that comes right from the city where I stay, Singapore. So in Singapore, what they have done is high-low technology, which has converted the normal standard traffic cameras that we see in every city. Now they are having edge computing capability. What it means is, let's say in a normal standard city, a traffic camera is capturing all the data and sending it back to the cloud. Of course, it's maybe only catching the high-speed cars, etc. But now these cameras that are fitted in Singapore have the capability to identify accidents, have the capability to identify weather or slowing traffic. So as a result, what happens is Singapore is able to deploy their resources by these cameras which are making split-second decisions on the edge. And rather than waiting for the entire footage to be sent through the cloud and analyzing the footage and making the decision, the exceptions which are identified by these edge accelerators are coming back, and the decision time has got reduced to milliseconds rather than a few seconds. Now, this is one application. This is in smart city application, but there are many other applications where these edge AI accelerators can be used. One important one, autonomous vehicles. When autonomous vehicles are being driven, obviously it is foolish to rely on cloud infrastructure completely to make each and every driving decision. If a car does that, then the car will not be able to drive fast. So any autonomous vehicle will need to have a very strong edge AI accelerator capability to make split-second driving decisions, and that is going to improve the ride quality, the speed, the access, and make the autonomous car look more closer to a manual car ride. The second one, healthcare. You have more and more robotic surgeries. You have more and more remote diagnostics. All of this will require edge capability. Supply chain as well as industrial. All of these areas will require some amount of edge AI accelerator capabilities to function much more smarter way than what they are doing before. Does it mean the AI in cloud is going to go away? Of course not. It is not going to go away. It is going to be complemented and supplemented by this edge AI accelerator to bring in to split the decisions which can be made at the back end in the cloud, or which have to be made in the front end at the edge. And that is what is the next wave, and the kind of GPUs which is basically called NPU, neural processing unit, that is required. Number two, it's going to save energy. So low power consumption is also another focus area, and split second decision making that is going to happen at the edge. So we are already looking at a very exciting future, and the day is not far when all these capabilities are going to land up into consumer durables. So our
Mm.
TVs, our washing machines, or anything that we are using at home, they will also have edge AI capabilities, and
Mm.
that is what will make our life look like a science fiction movie. Back to you, Ankit.
Excellent, Vivek. It makes me think of Internet of Everything. Remember that concept had come, and I guess AGI accelerators will enable that, right? So I think that's the direction we are all heading towards. And particularly, I am excited with what Edge AI can bring to many, many applications, the ones that you have mentioned, as well as manufacturing and Industry 5.0. So again, it's a technology to clearly watch out for. Now, if you would remember, and this is to everyone, right, in the last, I guess, 20 odd minutes, what we have seen is why we do the top 50, how we do the top 50, what are the top 50 technologies for 2026, and you have seen a glimpse of technologies that are from the healthcare side and of course now from the microelectronics elements as well. So taking your attention a little bit deeper into a topic that we all wake up in the morning with, which is energy. Now, given all things that are happening on the near term to mid term impact that countries and regions are going to face on the energy side, one of my favorite technologies from the top 50, and we all have our own 50, one of our favorites from any list that we go for, is small modular reactors. Now, if I was to think to myself in 2023 or 2024 that will nuclear actually make a comeback, then most likely my logical mind would have said no. However, what the methodology that we have been applying and some of my very passionate colleagues within the team have been telling is clearly small modular reactors, which is a part of the nuclear energy resurgence, is back in action. Now, this can be underscored by the fact that it has received $25 billion of public and private sector money in the last 2 years. Now, for the nuclear industry, which is technically very sound but limited in terms of the openness that happens around patenting their technology, 1600 patents is quite a bit. And as you can see, what are the themes that the players within that are focusing on? The mega trends are about three. And what's interesting is when we picked up small modular reactors as part of the top 50 in January of 2025, which is almost 15 months ago, the number of small modular reactors in the pipeline were, maybe I could count it on my fingers. But now I'm running out of fingers because there are about 68, last I know, 68 small modular reactors in the pipeline globally. And typically, these small modular reactors take about 7 to 10 years in terms of deployment. So you can see that the market potential is only going to go up from here. Now, what's driving that is, of course, use case wise, you have a number of organizations that are leading the chart. GE Hitachi Vernova is one, and I think they are going to be the first in the race to deploy the SMR in Canada along with the local entity over there. Region wise, of course, the US, North America, followed by even China, are investing heavily into SMRs. Now, only as of mid 2025, what we have also started to see is a number of governments have put SMRs as part of their national roadmaps and what they are projecting to do. And what that has led to is even countries like India, South Korea, European Union are actively looking at what SMRs can do for them. The reason behind the SMR resurgence is also linked to what data centers provide as an opportunity. Data centers are extremely power hungry, as we all know. And from a designing and commissioning perspective, to have a SMR, which is up to 300 megawatts or so in size, to have that right next to a data center on the coasts is one of the sweet spots of why SMRs are getting so much of traction as well. Now, what also this brings into is in the play of all these organizations that are over here, but not just the primary drivers of the nuclear industry, but also players from the test and measurement side, from the microelectronics side, from the materials technology, from EPRC constructors. When you look at the indirect impact that SMR will have going forward, it's pretty significant. Now, of course, regulation and government approvals and all that are always there with anything nuclear. But to say that a megatrend like geopolitics or a megatrend like energy first, sustainability later is definitely the case in point with SMR and what it is doing. So it's a perfect convergence of how a technology is maturing from a technology readiness level. The business readiness level of adopting the technology is growing, something that we'll look into, and then how megatrends is driving that push for adoption as well. So as you can see now, for each of these technologies, we go quite a bit in depth, and the use cases for the top 50 technologies are significant, which is right from helping you think beyond what you were focusing on a day-to-day basis to help align R&D pipelines, to bring product development, R&D themes into a bit of a convergence, raising board level awareness when we shared this with some of the very senior executives on the planet. And then, of course, using top 50 in your strategic vision or planning. Now, when we started 16 years ago, the target persona who typically leverage the top 50 annual thought leadership were primarily on the R&D innovation and CTO side. But post COVID, the change that I have personally witnessed and we are seeing is that the commercial teams and the strategy teams are also interested in it because they can then work along with their R&D colleagues to drive new growth for their business. Now, what we had all not touched on is how do we do it? Now, the 8 parameters you have been already introduced to in some extent, so I wouldn't go into too much detail over here. But what's critical is that for each, so we have a long list that we stress test across these 8 parameters. And for instance, this year's long list, from my memory, had about 410 to 415 technologies for which we had these 8 parameters on a scale of 1 to 10. So if I just ask your mind to do a very quick math, 400 plus technologies, 8 parameters, that means we are sitting on more than 3,200 data points individually for each of the technologies, which then helps us to understand the top 50 with the near term. Now, a very organic spin-off of this annual exercise was in the first few years, we would just stop at the top 50 because, hey, who was doing it 16 years ago? But then we realized that the question that was being asked of us is, we know what we know. Tell us what we don't know. And that's where one of the other outputs that comes out of the annual thought leadership is also future 18 technologies. Now, these are technologies with long-term commercial potential, which is 10-year plus. And that becomes such a hotbed for R&D teams to go into. Because remember, these are not being searched on your favorite LLMs. Your LLM even doesn't know to a certain extent why those technologies will be important, because what we are picking up is that these 8 signals for your long-term technologies are indicating that they may have strong buy-in and commercial impact in the future. And as you know, the top 50 thought leadership resides on a platform. What you get to go into is quite a bit of depth. The top 50 main deliverable itself has about 800 plus slides that you can go through, of course, by individual technology. The future 18 looks at technologies as we said, in the long term, which is the next 8 to 10 years. But then there is a third layer to it as well, which is we started noticing that the top 50 technologies would interact with each other. And that's where we spotted convergences of how technologies would combine with each other to give rise to new business models, new solutions, new products. So what this also provides you the ability to remember your 3Bs, which is build, buy, borrow. So which is if you can't build, if you can't buy, then are there partners from other ecosystems that you could combine with to create your own market opportunity? And that's where convergences look at how those technologies will come together. What is the probability of that scenario to evolve? And what is the sort of timeline you're looking at as well? So again, these three inputs from our side help you to give that static input, but you can also play with the data. As you can see over here, just some illustrations of what the platform looks like when you can compare and contrast technologies on the parameters we have. You have a bit of a pattern assessment that you can look at technologies from the past, from all the different 9 clusters of the 9 planets we have. What's the scoring? And you can also create your own heat maps, which is you can develop a technology blueprint and a market blueprint of the technologies, and then try and see is there any sort of white space that exists wherein you may want to focus things as well. So with that, of course, what I wanted to leave you with is what are the kind of problems we have been solving. So it's a delight to actually be involved in this, because when we started it, it started with a very different purpose. 50 years ago, it was Frost & Sullivan's 50th anniversary, 16 years ago rather. So that what led us to identify the top 50. But as we have progressed in our journey, so have the customers as well. Because the kind of problem statements we get from very different types of players actually makes us on our toes and gets us to explore newer themes that we haven't thought of before. So again, there is enough for you to sponge in from here and then start thinking of how the top 50 will drive your build, buy, borrow in that sense in terms of decisions. So yeah, Hannah, over to you.
Okay, so yeah, let me activate the first poll.
Sure. Let me stop sharing.
Okay. All right. The question is, which technology cluster will have the most immediate impact on your organization's growth strategy in 2026? So we have healthcare, industrial and manufacturing technologies. We have ICT and cloud, energy and environment. We have advanced materials.
And I'll let Vandana and Vivek come in as well, but not surprised. See, energy is top of mind, as we said, along with ICT. But it's good to see those two take the top spots in a way. I think that's also a function of the time and how the market potential is evolving. So any thoughts, Vivek, Vandana, on that?
I think it's fantastic. It's in line with what we have also predicted in terms of our overall trends when we were doing our top 50 research. We were overemphasizing the importance of the impact of both energy transitions and ICT technologies across all industry practice areas. So this is a good reaffirmation of what we thought would happen in the next few years. So yes, IT is here to stay and here to disrupt, and so our energy-based platform.
All right.
I think what is interesting for me is there is no clear winner. I mean, yes, of course, there is one option which has scored like 29%, but even if you see the option which has scored the least, which is about 12%. So it's basically saying that whatever we have done is equally applicable to all different areas, and there is enough interest in everything that we have done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that certainly is the indicators that we're getting through. So let me have a look on the webinar chat to see if there are any questions that we can address. So I see one wherein, what parameters do you use for stress test of the long list of technologies? I think we kind of eventually answered that, I think, which is the 8 factors we have, from intellectual property to funding, future market potential, mega trends, how many sectors, how many regions, has the technology grown in a disruptive or a step change manner, and what's the tech evolution. So those are the 8 factors that we use as part of our methodology. Again, just to clarify, it's a scale of 1 to 10 that we score each of the technologies on, and that's where our sort of ongoing effort on focusing on the technologies comes into being, because that gives the global team members we have the ability to say what's a 5 versus a 7 score, within one of those 8 parameters that we have. So um, I think we are blessed that we didn't change the methodology. I kind of laughed to myself. Had we changed the methodology, it would have been always a case of an apple versus an orange comparison, right? But now, because the methodology is set, and now we have the ability to run through this every year, even for us, we go back and see, okay, how many technologies changed between, for example, the 2024 prediction of top 50 versus 2026. Because remember, we are saying 2 to 3 years. So it's not the subsequent year comparison, it's the alternate year comparison in some cases. And then we analyze what's happening in terms of, the funding direction of where the money is going, or what is the patent activity telling us, or what's the ratio of change in market potential, right? Which gives us that ability to say, okay, how things are evolving. I see there was one more question on, what is your opinion on new energy transition materials? Example, carbon fiber tech landscape, feedstocks, contiguities, supply chain, and finally precision manufacturing and automation. Okay, so that's a very multi-layered question. So I'll probably try and take the first stab at it. Um, If I purely view it from a megatrends perspective, and again, this is what the industry is going through right now. If you dial back to 3 months, the start of the year to now, it feels like a very different world we are operating in from a business perspective. And that's an understatement. So, especially in the material industry, um, the focus on new energy transition materials, I won't say is taking a back seat, but it is not high priority. Let me put it that way. It's a nice to have in the near term. It's not a sort of midterm focus in terms of where do you want to invest in. For example, only yesterday we learned Dow Chemicals increased the price of polyethylene, the most common chemical used on the planet. They raised the price from 15 cents per kg to 30 cents per kg, which is they have doubled the pricing on the most common chemical that we all get impacted by on a day-to-day basis. And that, of course, is linked to what is happening. So if I kind of correlate that to what's happening in carbon fiber tech landscape, feedstocks, they all will go through a bit of a pricing shock over the next 3 to 6 months. And that will definitely have an impact in terms of adoption as well. So there's some elements on supply chain and precision manufacturing. Precision manufacturing and automation, of course, is something that is evolving. Some of the technologies that we have as part of our top 50 address what is taking place in that area, and then why those changes are taking place as well. And then finally, I think there was a question which Vandana may like, which is on. In fact, Vandana was the first person who spoke about GLP-1 to me many years ago.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
in a workshop. So the question, Vanna, is: do you foresee the uptake of oral versus injectable GLP-1s similarly in T2D and weight loss patient segments?
Yeah.
Or would you? I think I can't see the second part of the question.
Yeah,
Something
so
didn't say.
I saw the whole question. It's on
Good.
LinkedIn, and I think it's from Karan. So basically, the uptake of oral GLPs will be higher in T2D, which is your type 2 diabetes patients, because they will be looking towards management of diabetes more than that of obesity, and its efficacy from an oral standpoint will be absolutely optimal for diabetic patients, and that is where it will have a higher uptake. And even insurers will definitely be favoring oral formulations much better than injectables, because they'll have a better patient compliance rate. But as far as obesity is concerned, injectables will continue to be more effective for weight loss than oral formulations, whether it's a small molecule or a peptide. So, as far as weight loss is concerned, injectables will be favored more for improved efficacy. Again, these are all prescription drugs, so they need to be sort of had under medical supervision. And from a regional standpoint, I don't think it will have any impact. The
Hmm.
uptake of oral as well as injectables will be region agnostic.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Vanna. I know Hannah had a second question for all of us. Hannah, do you want to launch that? I'll put it on the screen.
Sure. Okay. 1 second. Poll number 2. Okay. Yes, it's up. Okay, so the poll will remain open for 1 minute, and once you have selected your answer, press X to close it. So the question is, what is the primary constraint slowing your organization's ability to convert emerging technologies into scalable growth? Whether it's limited implementation budget, regulatory or compliance constraints, lack of internal technical expertise, integration challenges with existing systems, or difficulty prioritizing which technologies to invest in first. So we have a few seconds left before I close the poll. So let's close the poll and show the result. And poll, share results. Back to you, Ankit.
Okay. Well, seems like 3 of those got the same score, or almost the percentage in that way, which is good, which is budget, internal challenges, and difficulty prioritizing. Well, at least with one of them, I can see we can definitely support you, which is the prioritization of the
Correct.
technologies.
That's right.
Any thoughts, Vivek?
Yeah, I think all of them are equally important, but like you said, difficulty in prioritizing is something that is right up our alley. Secondly, I would say even implementation challenges. Implementation, of course, not budget is not something we can solve, but if there is a lack of internal technical expertise, we can do something about it. So I think all in all, it's good to see the challenges, but there are quite a few of them that we can help them to solve, help the clients to solve.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Thanks for that, Hannah. Okay, so let me just have a final look on the chat to see if there is anything else we need to respond to. So we would love to partner with you, collaborate with you, and of course help you with your build, buy, borrow decisions. So with that, let me say, of course, it's always great to share our annual thought leadership with you. And that's what the top 50 technology represents for the last 16 years, is for us being that external view of how do we improve the noise to signal ratio. And what I mean by that is With the amount of information our mind is consuming on a day-to-day basis, it can become overwhelming to pick a choice on what should you do and why you should do it. I think that's where we come in as your external partner to bring that perspective in, and more importantly, help you make better choices. Because in many instances, what we have seen is it's not just the ability to tell you what should you do, but also to tell you what should you not do. Since the top 50 technology and the other outputs we have tells us where the current is blowing when it comes to a technology or a landscape or a mega trend, we are able to also help you in your risk management by telling you that there are certain industries or technologies that you should not focus on at the current moment because the anticipation of success will be other than what your expectation is. So yeah, I think it's as much telling you about what should you do, but also telling you what should you not do going forward as well. So with that, thank you so much for your time and attention, and thank you so much to Vandana, Vivek, and Hannah for being part of this, and wishing you all a great day. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for a great participation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.